Hello and welcome everyone, and thank you so much for joining today's session. And I really hope that you all are doing great in current time. So today I'm going to talk about Oracle Apex and the REST API. So as we all know that Oracle Apex is a database-centric, a low-code web application development tool. And using that, we can create the desktop application, we can create mobile application, and we can also use it as a data visualization tool. And while doing this, most of the time we are using the local data as the data source. But when we combine Oracle Apex and the REST API, so it is open a lot of door for the developers, and we can solve a lot of real life problem using both this technology. So today I'm going to share how I managed to solve one of the real world problem using Oracle Apex and the REST API. So here is my introduction. So I'm Rutvik, I'm from India, and I have 8 years of experience as an Oracle database developer. So basically I started my career as Oracle Forms and Reports developer. And then I moved to Oracle Apex and I'm working on Apex since 2014. So I'm very active in the community. I'm a member and volunteer of All India Oracle Users Group since 2019. And currently I'm working as a senior Oracle developer at NextGen Clearing Private Limited. So here are my Twitter, LinkedIn, and blog URL. In case if you want to connect me, you can connect on this platform. So let's jump on to the topic. So problem solving. I think that is what we all are doing in our day-to-day life, because we are from the IT people and our main job is to solve the problem and make the life of the people easy. So if I talk personally, I personally love to solve the problem because I to take it as a personal challenge. And once I solve the problem, I basically feel very adventurous. I feel very satisfying. So whenever I start solving any problem, so I start with the brainstorming a session, and I divided that session into two phases. So very first phase is a problem identification. So in this phase, I try to get answer of few of the question like what is the problem, why I wanted to solve that problem, and does it make any change once I solve that problem or not? Because sometimes we are technical people and we thought that it is a problem, but from end user point of view, they are actually happy with the current solution. So it is very important to discuss with them also. So once I got the answer of this question, then I move to the next phase, that is how I'm going to solve this problem. So in this phase, I decided which technology and tool I'm going to use to solve the particular problem, and then how the end user can have access to the solution which I'm going to provide. So let me introduce you the problem. So as I told you that I'm part of All India Oracle Users Groups. This is our main group, which is for all across the India. And then we, for different cities across the India, we run these local chapters. So what happened before the COVID time? So we used to had a monthly in-person event for each of these chapters. And to do the communication with all the members of the different chapters, we are using the Telegram as our official channel for the communication. So what is the problem? So for all in all, we have 12 different groups for different chapters. And sometimes it is very difficult to communicate to all the people. Why? Because before the COVID, we generally used to send the event reminders and upcoming event notification in the local chapters. But after the COVID, we moved to the online webinars and we are active there. We used to have two weekly webinars, and we also have two annual events for All India Oracle Group. One is Oracle Groundbreakers Yatra, and the second one is a Sangam, which is our annual conference. So during the normal days, it is fine, but during this conference where we have multiple sessions from Monday morning to evening for multiple weeks, it is quite difficult to send the reminders every hour in each groups. And generally we are doing the repetitive task all the days, and we have to reserve one volunteer for this task only, right? So this is where I thought that what if we have some kind of application where we can schedule the message, where we have the control to set the frequency, where we have control to choose in which group we want to send that message. So this is where I identified the problem. And the second question is why I wanted to solve this problem, because I wanted to save the time and automate the repetitive task. So then I decided to solve this problem using Oracle Apex and the REST API. So Apex is basically the kind of solution that I'm going to provide. Okay, we require some kind of application which I can create quickly. So that is why I choose Apex, and it also has very great support for the REST API. Right, so that is the first reason why I choose the Apex. The second reason is that because we have the distributed team for all the volunteers, and I also need to think that how that volunteers can have access of that application. So earlier we have that issues because hosting issues. We need to host this Apex application somewhere. So earlier we only have option apex.oracle.com portal, and earlier we only have that option. But now after the free tier, I think that is a great combination, Oracle Apex and the free tier, and we can host a great lots of application in that, and that is why I choose Oracle Apex. So now at the moment we know what is the problem, and we also know that how we are going to solve this problem. So in the subsequent steps, I'm going to show you what all steps I followed and which technology I used in order to create this application. So I'm going to start with the REST API. So what is the API? So as you all know that in this digital world, we humans are more connected with each other than ever before, right? So we are connected with each other using various social media application, emails, phone calls, and lots of other mediums. So all this application kind of works or act as an interface between us. So at the moment, I'm here in India and I'm connected with you using this Zoom application. So it is work as an interface between you and me. So similarly now, with the advancement in the technology, we have more and more smart appliance like car, we have enterprise application, we have mobile devices, we have sensors, we have smart home appliance, we have wearable devices, and these all computer application, all the machines want to interact with each other. For example, you have mobile devices and you have smartwatch. So whenever you got some phone calls on your mobile, you got that notification on your wearable devices, right? So how these machines interact with each other? So they are going to interact with each other using the API. So API stands for Application Programming Interface. So in my words, I actually understand is like API, like WhatsApp for this on all the machines and the computer program. So basically API allow the two computer program to interact with each other in terms of the data transfer, right? So API is for computer program only, and it let computer talk to each other. So when it comes to API, there are two kind of API. One is SOAP API and the second is the REST API. SOAP is a simple object access protocol. So I'm not going to talk about that today. My focus is on the REST API only. So REST stands for representational state transfer. So it is basically architecture that provide interoperability between two systems. It allows, or using that we can connect to system, to computer programs, right? And it use HTTP protocol for the communication. So let's say we have client and then we have server. So client want to connect with the server, so it will send the request using the REST API, and using this method get, post, put, and delete. These all are the HTTP method, which I'm going to explain in a couple of the slides. So once client send the request to the server interpret that request and the send response in the form of JSON and XML. So basically, REST API is basically a request and response model, right? And the great thing about the REST API is that the two participants in the communication can be completely different in terms of language, database, and architecture. For example, if the client on the client side, if our the computer program implemented in the Java language, and on the server side, it is absolutely fine that it is implemented in the Python. So there is no required that both the client and server need to be implemented in the same programming language. The only requirement is that the service that being called must be reachable by the caller. So now let me quickly cover what are the different HTTP methods. So for any application, we are doing the four basic operation. Either we are creating the information, either we are reading the information, either we are updating the information, or we are deleting the information. And for each of these operation, we have a corresponding HTTP method. So for create, we have post method, which is similar to the insert statement. And for read, we have the get method, which is same as the select. For update, we have put method, which is similar to the update SQL statement. And for delete, we have delete statement. So now I will going to quickly cover all this, how this all method works, right? So let's assume that we have this movie rental companies named Movies Hub, and we want to expose the information of our customer to the outside. So for the way to get the resource here, the resource is our customer, so we require the endpoint. And here, as I mentioned on the screen, we have endpoint URL to access the customer. So first I want to get the list of all the customers. So for that, I need to send the HTTP GET method. And once I send the request on this, using this endpoint URL, I got the response in the form of JSON. Basically, it is contains a list of all the customers. Here, as you see on the screen, it's ID 101, ID 102, and so on. Fine, let's see. Now I want to fetch the detail of only one particular customer, right? So again, we need to use a get method, but at this time we need to explicitly provide the ID of the customer for which we want to fetch the information. So here I mentioned 101. Once we send this request, we got the response for that customer only. Now to create a customer, we need to use a post method. And with that, we also need to supply the attribute, right? So for that, we need to use the body. So once we send this request on the server side, the data, this record get created in the server database, and we got the response like its ID is 101, name is Justin, here is phone number, and status is created. Again, to update the customer, we need to provide the customer ID for which we want to update the record, and along with that, we need to provide the body. So for put and post, both methods we require the body. So once we send this request, we got the response like ID, name, and the status. And in the last, to delete a customer, again, we need to provide the ID of the customer for which we want to delete the record, and it deletes the record. And we got the status like the record got deleted. So basically, these all are the four different methods. It's same like we are executing this for CRUD operation in the database. On the using this HTTP method, I think we are, according to me, we are directing the server to execute this method on behalf of us. So now we understand what is the REST API. We also saw what are the different methods, right? So now let's explore what are the different Telegram API, right? Because we need to automate this whole process, and for that we require the Telegram API. So let's understand what are the different Telegram API. So for REST API, there are two types of API. For some public API, we do not require authentication and we can directly access. And for some, most of the API, we require some kind of authentication, either we required, and for that we required API token. So to get the API token for the Telegram, first we need to create the bot. So here is the bot father, which is the official Telegram bot, which is used to create and manage all the bots in Telegram. So basically it is a father of all the bots in Telegram. So as you see on the screen here, I give it the command to create a new bot, and then it asked me for what is the name and what is the username of my bot. So here the username must be unique and it must end with board keyword. So once that criteria match, it gave me this token, HTTP token, and we are going to use this token in our subsequent API call for the Telegram. So that was the first step. The second step is I created this demo group, that is OGB EMEA demo group. This is a Telegram group, and then I added this chimp bot, that is the bot which I created as a member, and then I promoted it as an admin. So this is the second group. So here is the QR code of this group. So basically, if you are on the Telegram, so you can scan this code and you can join the group. for the demo, which I'm going to show you in the end of the session. All right, so these are the different Telegram API. So as you can, for more detail, you can visit this URL. So as you can see on the screen, we have different API methods for all the different operation in the Telegram. So out of those, all these methods. All right, so so let first understand what are the endpoint URL pattern. All right, so here is the base URL of the Telegram API, and then we need to append the token that we got from the board father, and in the last we need to append the method name. So Telegram support both get and post HTTP method. So here are the four methods which I used in order to create this application. So very first is the get me method. So the only work of this method is that we can authenticate our tokens using this get me method, right? So it is used to authenticate our token. We can check whether our token is valid or not. And then the get update method. Okay, again, it is a get method. So basically this method gives us the response of whatever activity which is happening in our group. Currently one of the attendee joined the group, so that is one kind of activity. Someone left the group, that is also another activity. So whatever happened in all the group where our bot is the admin, so get update method return all those incoming updates, right? And why I use this group, because in Telegram each group has a chat ID, that is unique identifier for each group, and we require that ID in order to send the message in particular group. So Telegram does not provide any direct API where we can get the chat ID by the group name or by username. So the only method which I found is the get update method. So I will show you how I acquired or how I fed the chat ID using the get update method later on. Okay, so the third method is the send message. As its name suggests, it is used to send the text message. And here two parameter is mandatory. The first one is the chat ID, as I mentioned earlier. And the second is the text message, the message that we want to send. And in the last is the send photo. Basically, this method is used to send the photo along with the caption. So again, two parameters are required, chat ID and the photo, and the caption. This is the third parameter, which is the optional one. All right, so let me show you how I test this API using the Postman. So here is the Postman. This is the nice tool. Using that, we can test the different API. So before that, let me show you the group which I created. So here is the board father. And as I show you, I created this new board. It's asked me to create name and username of my board. And it gives us the API token. So then I created this different group. This is OGB EMEA group. And I also created other different group for the demo purpose only. So let's get back to this Postman. First, I'm going to test this get method. So here is the type of the method, which is get. Here I appended the token which I got from the board father, and here I appended the get me method. So once I send the request, I got the response. Basically, I got this response. It means that our token is valid and we can use it for other API also, right? The second one is the get update method. So when I send it, it give us the update, and this is the all the updates, and this is the latest update that this user got a new chat member. And from this response, I am interested in this chat ID because the ID of this OGB EMEA group is this one, and I require this ID. So basically, I use this method. I created one page where I can using on button click, I invoke this method. I got the response. I pass the response, and I fetch this ID and store it in one of the table, which I show you during the demo. The next one is the send message. Again, the type of this is the post. And as you see here, I provided the chat ID and the text welcome to OGB demo group. So once I send, instantly I got this message in the OGB demo group. Okay, and in the last, this one is the send photo. Again, this is the post method. And here I provided the chat ID, I provided the URL of the photo. Again, we have two options for either we can provide the image URL or we can also upload the photo on the Telegram server and we got the file ID, and using we can also send the using that file ID. We need to use that file ID in order to send the photo. But here I used the first method, which I provided the image URL of the image, and optionally I also provided this caption. So once I send this, I got this message on my group, right? Let's jump back to our slides. So this is how I tested my Postman API. This is the get me, this is the get update, and this is the send message. So at the moment, we explore the test, we fetch, or we got the API token, we explored the different Telegram API, we tested that using the Postman. But now question is, the next step is that how we are going to consume the REST API in Apex, right? So before that, let me quickly introduce you the architecture of the Apex. So basically, Apex is a typical three-tier architecture where we have browser, we have middle tier, that is Oracle REST data service, which is deployed. We can deploy that on WebLogic and the Tomcat, and then where last we have the database tier, where all the logic, all the magic happens, because all our application logic and database logic stored in the database only. So unlike other three-tier architecture where we have application logic in the middle tier, here in the Apex we have data and the application logic all on the database tier. So when browser sends the HTTP request, middle tier does not have any logic. It only converts the HTTP request into the appropriate database call and direct it to the database tier. On the database tier, we have zero latency data access, which is dynamically driven by Apex metadata. So this is a typical architecture. And now let's show what are the different kind of the data source. So as I told you earlier, most of the time we are using a local data source with our Oracle Apex application. That is, our data and Apex both are in the same database. But sometimes we also require to access the data from our remote enterprise database. And we can do that using database link. And we can also do that using the REST enabled SQL. That is the feature of ORDS. And then the third data source, which is external APIs. So which is what our interest, which is what our today's interest, right? So we can directly get the data from the REST API, and we can create the different Apex component on top of that data from that REST API. So to consume a REST API, basically we have two options. The first one is the Apex Web Services, which is I used in this application, and the second one is the REST data source. So basically, if you want to create any component, Apex component like interactive grid or classic report and all the different components. So for that, we are going to use REST data source. So what happened before Apex 18, right? So how we are consuming the REST API. So at the very bottom, we have this UTL HTTP standard PL SQL package, which handles all the HTTP requests. And then Apex provide this package Apex _ web services. So using this, we need to invoke this API. We got the response in the form of JSON. And then if we are on the database 11G, then we can parse that using Apex _ JSON. And if we are on the newer version of the database, then we can natively parse inside the SQL, right? So using these packages, we need to create our custom packages. Then we need to create table function, and then only we can use those data which we got from the API in our different Apex component like classic report, interactive report, and other usage, right? So the limitation with this is that still we require a lot of manual coding. We need to create our custom package and all other stuffs, and still we need to parse our JSON or XML manually, right? So after Apex 18 and the newer version, we have this new exec infrastructure where all the component, this is the centralized place where all the component of the Apex directly talk to this component only. And in the backend, this exec infrastructure get the data from either from the local database or from the REST enabled SQL, or from the REST sources, right? So if it is local and the REST enabled SQL, then basically it either execute the SQL query or PL SQL block inside the database. And if it is from the REST source, then it will invoke the HTTP request, fetch the response, parse the response, and then this component can use those data. So because of this exec infrastructure, we have this new option for each component. If you observe in the newer version, that we have this option to choose the location from where we want to select the data, right? So it is because of this exec infrastructure only. All right, so now I'm going to show you how we are going to create the REST data source, and then how we can create a component on top of that, right? So for that, I'm going to use this MovieDB API. So let me show you that. So this is the API. This is the MovieDB API. It is a free. It is basically provide the detail of all the movies, and I'm going to use that. So first we need to go to the set component. Right, then we need to go to this REST data source, and here we need to create the REST data source. Basically, as Apex is a metadata driven application, here we need to provide the, basically it's parse this API, and then it fetch store the its metadata in Apex schema, so we can use it as a table only. So here we need to provide the name, so I'm going to provide the name, the MovieDB. And here we need to paste that URL, the endpoint URL or of our API. When we click next, Apex automatically identify the base URL and the service URL. Click next. Here, I'm not going to provide the authentication because we already provided the authentication API key in our URL. So I'm simply click discover. So at the moment in the backend, Apex sent the request to that API. It got the response, it parsed the response and present us in this nice tabular format. So it identifies that we have these columns. These are the different columns. And if you want to see, so it identifies, it parses all this column with the data type. So once it looks good, we can create the REST data source. So fine, here at the moment we created the REST data source. Let's click on it. As you see, here are the different query. Here is the query parameter. These are the parameter, and I'm interested in a data profile. All right, so here is the data profile. You can click the data profile. So here are the different attributes which Apex automatically parsed from that JSON response. And as you see that we did all those stuff without writing a single line of code. So once we are good with that, let's go to the Apex application. And now we are going to create an interactive report. So here I'm going to select interactive report. My page name is the MovieDB. I'm going to create a normal page, click next. I do not want to create a navigation entry, click next. So yeah, so here is the three option which I mentioned in earlier. So we have the local database, we have REST enabled services, and then we have the REST data source. So here I'm going to select the REST data source. Here I'm going to select the MovieDB, and at the moment, I just want to display all the columns in my report, and I click create. So once I do this, the report is created. Let me run this report. All right, so it fetched the data from that REST API only, and it still looks like that we are getting this data from the table. So this is one of the way how we can create a different component using the REST API, and there is a lot of we can also do the synchronization to refresh the API data, and these all are the detailed session which I'm not going to cover. But we can, using this, we can create a whole application basically, which depends directly on the REST API and not on the local database. All right, so this is the Apex Web Services. Though previously I showed you the one way how I'm going to how we can create the REST API using the REST data source and create the component. And this is also the second method, that is the Apex _web service packages. So basically, for this application, I use this method because I do not want to create any component directly on the REST API. That is why I use this method. So as you see on the screen, the first parameter is token, then the chat ID and the message text, the same uh, parameter which I provided in the Postman. And then I used this apex web service dot make request rest request method, and using that I can invoke this REST API. So let me show you the demo. All right, so here is the first method. All right, so here I executed this first code and I got this message, that text message sent from the PL SQL. And now we also want to test the send photo message method. So again, I'm going to paste it here. Here I provided the token, I provided the chat ID, I provided the image URL, the same thing I did in the Postman. And then this is the caption. And using this web service dot make rest request, I'm going to invoke this method. Once I do that, I got a message in the Apex like this in our group. Let's go back to our session. All right. So this is the send message and this is the send photo message. So at the moment, we created this bot, we acquired the API token, then we added that in the group and make it the admin. We tested the REST API using the Postman, and then we see how we are going to invoke that using the PL SQL and Apex. So at the moment, we have everything that is required for us, and at the moment we have everything. And now the next step for me is to create the application. So for that, I created the application using, so for that, I created this three table. Basically, the tg underscore setup method is basically store my API key. Then tg underscore subscribe. Basically, I fetch all the API or all the chat ID and store in the subscribe method. And the third one is that tg underscore messages, store all the messages which I'm going to schedule. And then I created two packages. The first one is the package send message. Basically, this package handles all the API calls for the Telegram. Basically, two methods, send method and send photo. And then the second package is scheduler, TG package scheduler. Basically, I used this package to create the schedule, to create the scheduler for these messages. So let me show you the demo. So here is my Telegram application which I created. First, I'm going to this port setting, and here I provided the API token which we got from that port father. And second, we require the chat ID. So for that, here I implemented the refresh as I told you earlier, and in the backend, it will invoke the get update method and get the update from all the group, and from that it will pass that chat ID and store in one of the table which I mentioned earlier. And here it is display this information about the group. So for the demo purpose, I created the 6 group. So now it's time to schedule a message. So for this, just taking too much time. All right. So basically, I created the screen for as per our requirement, but we can modify that. So here I'm going to select the session date, that is today, and then session title. So I have created this Oracle Autonomous. So with the speakers, Jahid Anwar, and then we need to provide the message text. So here is the message text, which I got it from the Twitter. And then we need to provide the image URL. So here is the image URL. So these are the basic requirements. Then we have this option whether we want to active this message. If this message is active, then only it will send in the all the groups. So I am going to active this message, and then here is the option for all which different group I want to select them. I want to send this message. So for the first message, I'm going to select all. And here we have option to schedule this message. So I'm going to schedule it for now to tomorrow. And here is the frequency. Let's say I want to send this message every minute. So once this is done, we need to click on this create. All right, so this is our first, I schedule the first message. So meanwhile, let me schedule the another message. So for that, I'm going to same date. I'm going to select today's date. And I'm going to session. This is a demo or test. Who is the speaker? And for the message text, I'm going to provide this text. Image URL. I'm going to send this image URL. I active, and let's say I just want to send the message in this two group only. Send it right now. I want to send it at every minute also. So as you see, I also scheduled the second message, and meanwhile we got the first message in our group. So we got this message in this group. And then we got the message in this group. We got this message. So basically, we have the option in which group we want to send the message. So let's wait for the second message also. About 30 seconds only, I think. So basically, I created this screen here. Using this, we can edit the message also. So you can create the screen based on your requirements. So here we got the second message also in our all the groups for which we scheduled that. All right, so let me disable inactive this message at the moment, otherwise we got it again. So I did that, and for this also let me inactive it. All right, so this is the demo. Let me go back to our screen. All right, so what is the next steps, right? So I did it for the Telegram only, but we have the Slack, we have WhatsApp, we have Facebook, and we have Twitter and all other social media places, right? So based on the requirement, based on the demo, let's say we have our order application, and if you want to send the order confirmation to your customer directly on the WhatsApp, so you can do that using the WhatsApp. WhatsApp also provides the API, business API. Let's say if you want to, you have internal Slack channel, and you have some incident in your application, and you want to directly send those incident on your Slack channel, so we can do that using the Slack API. And if you want to send this we can automate the tweet, we can do that similarly using this Telegram. What I did, we do the same in the Twitter also, right? So here is the different resources. Here I provided all the link for the API, and in the last I provided the GitHub link if you want to access this application. So here I provided this application. You can download this application from this link, and you can directly install in your workspace, and you can use it. All right, so here I'm going to end my presentation, and before that I would really like to thank this mass program, because I'm going to speak in front of you because of this mass program only. And there are a lot of great mentors who are supporting this group, and because of them I am today in front of you. So I really would like to thank the mass program. And if you also want to be a part of this program, so you can visit this link for the more details. And the second community group, which is very close to my heart, is the All India Oracle Users Group. And Sangam 20 is our upcoming event, Sangam 21. So Sangam 20 is the event which I got the idea last year to build this whole application. So today we are now ready with the Sangam 21, and the CFP closes today. So if you want to interested, please submit your call for paper. and I really would like to invite you to the Indian community. All right, thank you.